Do you ever feel like your life is just consumed by being a mother? Or maybe like you're not even sure who you are anymore since becoming a mom? Well, those feelings are really common, but we're not powerless over them. So in this video, I want to share my best tips for not losing yourself in your motherhood. I'm Rachel. I'm a mama of 3 littles, and I'm also a pediatric occupational therapist. Each week I share videos to help support families of babies and toddlers. My first tip might seem like an obvious one. It's to not mom all the time. You do not need to be available or physically present for your kids around the clock. Relationships are about quality, not quantity of time spent. So I know someone in my community who has a child with a terminal illness, which is just so heartbreaking, but honestly, following her on social media is really inspiring. So every time she posts about going out for a night on the town with girlfriends or having an overnight trip away with her husband, it just reminds me that no one is meant to do this job around the clock, day and night and night and day without breaks. If you're feeling lost in motherhood lately, take stock of how often you're getting a physical break from caring for a small human. Does it feel like enough? How might you get more? What these physical breaks look like may vary based on how old your kids are, how much caregiving help you have, where you live, and your budget. So I remember when I had a colicky newborn, and every night from about 7 p.m. when she started crying until 10 or 11 p.m. when she stopped, I was doing all the things. I was soothing, I was swaddling, I was bouncing, I was shushing, I was giving the gripe water and bicycling her legs so that she could poop. I was doing it all. And one day, not too long into that journey, I snapped at my husband and just kind of lost it. And I was like, I can't do this. This is too much. I can't do this all evening and then be woken up all night long to feed her, and then the next day wake up and parent all 3 of my kids. It just was too much. And it was true. I want to mention that before you go assuming that my husband isn't very helpful, he is. But I have a supermom complex sometimes, and I was kind of owning all the responsibilities. I wasn't allowing myself to take physical breaks or ask for physical breaks from momming. So once I was willing to wave the white flag and say that it was too much and I needed those breaks, we were able to bring in a babysitter, so a couple of hours a week during the day I could get a break. I learned to hand the crying baby off to my willing husband and take a walk around the block just to get some physical distance from the crying. And so it really took that rock bottom moment for me to feel in my body, mind, and soul that like I was not made to do this all the time and I deserved a break. So because I breastfed all 3 of my babies into toddlerhood, I really haven't gotten a lot of those big, extravagant, extended breaks from my kiddos. But the further along I get in my motherhood journey and the more kids I add, the better I am at getting those smaller, more regular breaks throughout the day and throughout the week. And so for me, what that looks like is having my kids, as soon as they're toddlers, start to do a quiet time so that I can get ready in the morning. And then as they get older and drop an afternoon nap, they do a quiet time then too, so that I can get a quick midday workout in, or bringing in a babysitter, or using nursery school, which I never thought that I would do. It wasn't in my plan, but once I had 2 or 3 kids, I realized I do need a break from this. This is too much to do this all day and all night. And just little things like once a week, ditching bedtime and letting my husband do everything and leaving after dinner to go read at a bookstore. Just kind of that taking a break from the daily grind and taking a physical break from momming around the clock. Another piece of the puzzle, which I won't get into a big soapbox about because it's such a personal issue, but if you are momming around the clock, you may want to consider, unless your baby is a newborn, you may want to consider how to give yourself breaks at night. Maybe that's letting someone else do the nighttime duties, or maybe that's starting to do some sleep teaching with your baby so that you can get a break. My next tip goes hand in hand with that first one. And in fact, it is crucial if the first one is going to have any effect. And that is, you have got to take a mental break from momming. Has anyone else ever gotten a break from their kids and they find themselves thinking about, oh, is the babysitter going to remember to test the bottle temperature before they give it to the baby? Or I wonder if daddy remembered to pack a snack when he took the toddlers out today. Or you find yourself reading a parenting book or magazine, or pinning activities and craft ideas to do with your kids. Or maybe you're Googling down all those rabbit trails about some developmental question you have, or some health or medical question that you have about your kiddo. Yeah, what you've done is taking that physical break and let your kids still consume it. And your motherhood role is coming right along with you into your break. So I have a great example of this. A few months ago, I got a really rare day away from my kids, and I spent it at a local hotel spa. It's so rare that I've actually never done that, but I asked my mom for it for Christmas. Thank you, Mom. So I'm there, I'm by the pool in my fuzzy robe. I've got my novel. I'm just like soaking it in, right? And along comes a family of 4, and they parked it right close to me and unloaded their goldfish and their pool noodles. And I spent about 4 minutes like noticing the little girl's bathing suit and wondering where they'd gotten that, and kind of eavesdropping on how mommy was handling some sibling quarrels they were having, and watching the kids jump and squeal as they got into the pool. And don't get me wrong, they were staying in the hotel. They had every right to be there. They were doing nothing wrong. But you know what? I got up and I relocated to a different pool because I needed to protect the mental break I was getting, right? So I'm physically away from my kids, but if I'm going to get sucked into this whole scene of parenting, I am bringing my mom role right along with me into my break. So whenever you're physically getting a break, I want you to check in with yourself. Have you left your mom role behind as much as any of us possibly can? Are you protecting your mental space during that break so that you're getting a mental brain break from momming? And my third tip goes right along with those other 2, and that is don't let your mom life dominate your relationships. You need to have social interaction that isn't focused on your mom role with your spouse, with your parents, with your friends. I find this one really hard as a stay-at-home mom because the vast majority of my time is spent with my kids. So when I'm with other adults, it just sort of happens. It bubbles up out of me to talk about my kids and talk about my family and talk about my mom struggles and my mom victories. But I have learned to set some boundaries sometimes to protect those relationships and let the content of those relationships not all be based on my mom role. So this isn't always easy, but for example, we've set some rules sometimes on date nights with my husband, like we are not talking about our kids tonight. And there are several times in the night where someone will start to talk about kids and we'll say, oh, wait, nope, no kids on date night. So we're trying to leave that role behind a little bit and develop our relationship outside of that mom role. Another example, get a little personal here, but is that we don't talk about our kids in our bed because without noticing it, our pillow talk had been kind of consumed by parenting talk. So we made that boundary. Sometimes when you go out with your mama friends, sometimes it's great to dish and talk about momhood, but you also want to take breaks from that. And you may have to name that, like, hey, tonight, I just don't want to talk about my kids. I noticed that when I get together with my friends, it's really easy when they say, how are you doing? For me to fill them in on how my kids are doing, how our family is doing, how we are doing. And so I really have to check myself. And I encourage you to stop and really check in. How are you doing? Not as a mom, as a human being. So what else can you talk about if you're not talking about your kids? It can be tricky sometimes, but here's some ideas. Sometimes I talk about current events and my thoughts about current events. Sometimes I share a show that I'm really into, or a book that I'm reading, or a movie that I recently saw. Sometimes I just talk about personal development goals I'm working on. Hey, I'm trying to go to bed earlier and it's really hard for me, but I've had some victories recently, as an example. So I want you to be aware of whether or not you're allowing your mom role to dominate your relationships with other adults. My fourth tip is going to go a little bit deeper, but hang with me. My fourth tip is to make sure that you're not blending your identity with the identity of your child or children. And what do I mean by that? It's easy, especially I find with first-time moms, to believe that parenting is deterministic, meaning what effort and strength that you put in results in what comes out. And so what this looks like is you might feel personally really full of pride and accomplishment when your child is successful or has strengths. On the flip side, you may attribute a lot of blame to yourself when your child struggles or fails. You may feel ashamed when your child is struggling. One of the huge gifts of my third-time mom perspective is that I get to see in a way I definitely didn't as a first-time mom how truly different kids are, how uniquely them they are. As a mom, I know I'm impacting them and teaching them for sure, but everything about them and everything they do is not a reflection on me. So here's a great example of that. A lot of times when I'm working with parents of young toddlers, their toddler will at some point bite or push or pull hair or scratch or pinch, and the parent is really rattled by it. And one of the things they often say is, my child is growing up in a peaceful home. He's not seeing us be violent and he's not watching anything violent on the TV. Where is this coming from? Well, it's coming from the fact that he's a human being. He is his own person. And so he is going to have scuffles with other kids, or he's going to even get angry at his parents and maybe lash out at his parents. It's developmentally just something he's going through that doesn't have a whole lot to do with you. You didn't cause this. And so I try to help support parents in impacting their kids, enjoying their kids, helping their kids, while maintaining this separate identity. Here's another personal example from toddlerhood. When my child was really young and he was having intense separation anxiety, I got really anxious. And in fact, I would get anxious just thinking about leaving him at church nursery or at the gym childcare. I felt his emotions myself. I felt anxious and I felt responsible for his emotions. And sometimes I even felt like I was responsible for protecting him or keeping him from feeling hard things. Nope, that's not my job. And it's not yours either. So the second and third times around as a mom, I was able to see that I could be a good mom. I could be an awesome mom. And the fact that my daughter was slower to achieve motor milestones, that wasn't my fault. The fact that my son is an amazingly gifted reader, that's not all to my credit. The fact that my 5-year-old had an epic tantrum at the Children's Museum and I had to physically carry him out, kicking, screaming, and spitting, that is not a reflection of me or my parenting. I am a good mom doing my best, and I can hold my head up high because he is having a tantrum. I'm not having a tantrum. We are not having a tantrum. I'm in control. I'm doing a good job as a mom, and he is a human being in his own right. And some days he's off, and some days he's overstimulated, and he's hungry, and he's just kind of done, and he has a meltdown. There's nothing there to be ashamed of. I want you to remind yourself that you are separate from your kids. It's one of the most important ways to not lose yourself in motherhood. I know it sounds a little obvious, but the next time your kid has a high or a low, I want you to notice whether you find yourself taking some credit or attributing some blame to yourself. Next time they're feeling a hard feeling, notice if you feel responsible for managing it or for working harder to shield them from hard feelings. Another way that I encourage and support moms to fight this mommy overwhelm is to equip them with tools to strengthen their bond with their baby. That video on your screen right now is going to give you 3 of those tools, and I'll see you in the next video.